everybody, it's Matt. Welcome to another episode of the What You Doing podcast, where I talk to cool people about the amazing stuff that they're working on. This time I'm sitting down with John Boyle from Breitbart Games to discuss their new Zine Quest project, Bonds Between, an adorable duet game where you play as dragons looking to repair their shared habitats. I'll talk more in the outro, so let's get on to it.
I would say to somebody in a Marvel Rivals game, touch grass.
Yeah, I say that on all time on stream when I take my break. I'm like, go outside, get some fresh air, touch some grass, do whatever you got to do. It's like, listen, in the good way, go out and touch some grass. You know, it's great. Just go out, be in nature for a little bit. It's a positive feeling. It gives you good energy. And also sometimes, buddy, go touch some fucking grass. Like, and those are really different. Like, those are different energies.
Yeah. And honestly, like that's, speaking of touching grass, like that's genuinely like what half of our games are about, is just like go touch grass, man. Mm-hmm. and be a person who's not like connected to screens or devices or anything like that. Like you get a journal and a pencil and listen to the world around you and decide what you like about it. Just like
separate for a minute.
Yeah.
Okay, everything looks good. I'm figuring out a workflow for doing video. Mm-hmm. And so it's a lot of like, okay, how do I do this? How do I want to set this up? How do I make sure that this doesn't look stupid or sound stupid or anything? And
yep. I feel that. There's just like there's so many little fiddly pieces of it. Mm-hmm. In trying to like get something to look polished, between like how you lay something out or like video and audio editing, like how much of either of those things you do and to what degree.
And there's always the struggle of like, if I spend an hour on it, it'll look pretty good. If I spend 2 hours on it, it will only look slightly better than pretty good. And so was that second hour, was that worth it? Maybe I should have just been done and I could have done two things. And it's always that back and forth.
There is like it's true, I think, just like it's broadly applicable in creative stuff in general, right? Where it's like, at what point have I reached diminishing returns? Mm-hmm. At what point should I just be like, no, I'm not going to add another section to the game, or I'm not going to like fiddle with, 10th of a second bits of video editing here that are very likely going to be not noticed by the casual viewer.
Right. And it's like, how good does that edit look? It looks fine. I don't think we're no one is going to pay as much attention to it as I will. And mm-hmm. So that's, we can move on.
Yeah. And like truly, if you can get a couple of standout, especially like on shorter edits, if you can get a couple, like one standout moment, that's all people are going to think about. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If you get one really good bit, like that's, as long as the rest of it is passable, it's fine. There's an article, I think, on, I can't remember who wrote it. It was a blog article the other day about like don't hide the ape in your games.
I saw people talking about it. I didn't have a chance to read it. I saw people talking about it.
Yeah, I read some of it, but like the gist of it, because I also was like, oh, this is a good article, and I got halfway through it, and I was like, I need to actually sit down and devote time to this, and forgot to devote time to read the full article. But
always,
it was basically talking about how it's important in this case in game design to not like hide the cool stuff. Don't like obscure it or like take forever to get to it. If there's a cool thing that your game does that is like its call to action, its selling point, mm-hmm. Whether that's like product wise or just like in the come play this, get to that and don't like obscure it in a bunch of stuff. In reference to an old video where they're like, count how many times the people wearing this pass a ball, and in the middle of the video, like a guy in an ape costume walks on, beats his chest, and walks off, and then the color of the curtain changes over about 2 seconds. And they're like, at the end of the video, they're like, it was 16 passes. Did you notice the curtain and the ape? And a good chunk of people are like, what ape? The curtain changed color?
Yeah. I remember seeing a bunch of videos like that, like early internet days. Because like when internet video was so new, you know, you'd have the thing that my friends and I talk about all the time were the old like jump scare videos.
Oh yeah.
You know, where you just get sent a random video and you're like, what is this? What is happening? And then there'd be a big jump scare. And so like I feel like that sort of video where it's like, oh yeah, watch the passes, you're like, I'm ready. What's gonna happen? And then I love that curveball. I'm absolutely that person though that's like, oh, the curtain changed? Oh, dog.
Yeah, I saw the ape and then I missed the curtain because I was like, I felt emotionally that something about the video had changed, and then it ended and it were like, yeah, okay, so I was right. It was 16 passes, and I saw the ape walk off screen because I noticed that he wasn't doing the same circling movement that the others were. And then I was like, I feel like something else is different, but I couldn't put my finger on it. And they're like, oh yeah, the curtain changed color. And
you're like, I didn't notice that. I can't. I'm not going to take credit for noticing that, but I did feel like there was something.
But yeah, I think there's also something to be said about like that video where like there's so much going on, and like the what you ask of the person looking at it is, you know, do this particular thing, and when there's so much else going on around it, you know, either you miss the cool stuff happening around it because you're focused on the one thing, or you notice the other stuff happening instead of the thing you're supposed to be focusing on.
And that's every video game ever.
Yeah.
Either you read the tutorial and you missed the cool cutscene, or you saw the cool cutscene and you missed the tutorial.
Yup. A friend and I were talking about this about Rivals last night because I'm bad at it. Like I was girlfriend picked Jeff, and that's who I play.
Listen, there's nothing wrong with playing Jeff, but
he is a war criminal. He's very cute. He's just a little guy. He's a war criminal.
Every character in that game is a war criminal. Watch for my 2-hour YouTube video essay.
Cannot wait. There's a 30-minute section devoted to Jeff players, and a 45-minute section devoted to people who play Moon Knight.
Number 1, Magneto. I don't even have to say anything. We can move on.
Yeah.
No one watching this video I'm not going to reveal any secrets to anyone watching this video. Number 2.
Yeah, the moment I hear the moon haunts you or for mutant kind, I'm like, all right, so I'm going to be watching a kill cam in about a tenth of a second.
You just take it. You're just like, all
right, cool.
Let's just relax for 2 seconds. It's fine. You know, listen, my water's empty anyway. It's fine.
Yeah. All right. I'll be right back. Like,
yeah. No, it's good. It's good. Take a little walk.
But we were having a similar conversation to just like, I do wish sometimes that there was like a little bit more game to Marvel Rivals because there's so much going on. And sometimes when everybody starts shouting alt lines and there's particle effects all over the screen and like the kill feed starts going nuts and there's like text flashing up because you or somebody else has done something. There's just like boom, 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 boom. I'm just like, I don't know what's happening. I'm gonna use my abilities and black out for about 10 seconds.
Am I doing good? I don't. We're just gonna. I'm gonna hit 4, and I'm gonna hope we get through this.
Exactly.
I had that when the little bit I was playing Diablo 4 with a friend of mine when it was like it really started going, and I'm like, I'm just gonna keep clicking, and I'm gonna look at my little health bubble, and that's low. Boop. And we're gonna get through it. We're gonna get through it together.
Been playing the Path of Exile 2 beta and the same thing. One of my friends was watching me level up my monk, and he was like, I can never tell if you're genuinely about to die or taking a calculated risk. And I'm like, I'm gonna be honest, I'm just trusting that the lightning that I'm shitting constantly is going to kill these guys before they can finish me off. And I have a pretty good idea of how fast my health bar goes down on average versus how much the potion can heal me.
Yeah, that's the trick is you gotta know that balance in your head. And also it's both things all the time. It's always a stupid move and a calculated risk. It's just how it turns out. If you win, calculated risk, skill play.
Yep. Most of the time, I'm like, I'm going to put the bell down and I'm going to hit it and make lightning go everywhere on the screen. And if the boss's health bar goes down fast enough, I'm staying right here.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, I'm going away.
I just have to kill him before everything else kills me. And that's fine. That's the game.
Yeah. The joys of natural lighting is that I'm never quite sure. I need to turn this. I'm going to do this. What time of day is it here? Who can say?
You'll never know. It's stream time.
It's stream time. That's what it
is.
It's
the time for stream. I gotta get out of the habit. I gotta remember, because I'm recording this through Discord, to not click into a chat from my friend from Discord.
I have to do that. Oh, it's so hard. It's so hard.
It's very learned behavior to just be like, no, you gotta just wait. Just wait. You're doing a thing. Yeah, that's maybe the entire ADHD thing of my life, is just like, no, you're doing a thing. Finish the thing.
Especially if you're I must clear the notifications kind of person, which I very much am. I need to see what it's about at least.
I'm just a people pleaser. I'm that person that's just like, yes, am I needed?
Exactly.
And it's like, no, this was a silly. This is a silly GIF. This is a TikTok, and it's like, oh, well, okay.
Yeah, third TikTok about Jeff today. Yeah, all right, fair.
I like the idea that they're exclusively about Jeff. Like, if it's a TikTok, it is a Jeff TikTok.
Yep. If it's about rivals so far between most of my friends, it's been about the experience of playing support being universal in hero shooters, or Jeff. They know me well.
I'm glad. There's a part of me that is glad that I don't really play hero shooters. I just don't like vibe with the genre. Like, I played a few and I just don't. So that when one Marvel Rivals comes out where it's Marvel, it's a thing I should be excited about, I'm just like, no, I know I'm not gonna. I know in my heart I'm not going to. I don't need to fight this fight. Just let it wash over me.
Yep. I play it mostly just truly like I joked about the girlfriend pick, but like I am that friend who will play Rivals with you because it's what you're playing and I want to hang out and sometimes play a game with you, but understand I am not going to make any real attempt at being competitive or improving. Right. I'm just vibing and blowing bubbles. Like,
you would be better picking someone else. You would like, this is a bad decision on your part, but we get to hang out, so that's cool.
Yeah, exactly. Just to set our expectations going into this. The best you will get out of me playing Marvel Rivals is this like 6 months to a year before people have solved the game, where everyone's bad at it.
Right.
And I will seem like I am okay. But that's only because everyone else is also bad right now.
Everyone else is also in this band, and I'm in the middle of this band. I'm okay. And that band will eventually move simultaneously up and down. And I will not rise with it. I will stay where I am forever.
Filthy, bubble-blowing Jeff man that doesn't know where the spots to throw people off the map are.
Just tiny Jeff doing his best. God love him.
God love him.
Well, all right. Now that we're done with the pre-show, which let me tell you, doing an interview show, this has been the hardest part of it, is just like immediately talking and then like 20 minutes later being like, okay, so hi, so this is a podcast. And you know what? I'm just gonna lean into it. Like it's fine. People like warm opens, people like chats, people will love hearing about Jeff. It's great.
And that's the kind of stuff that you can always cut together too, and like, or that you can include as you like. Pre-show sometimes is great. Sometimes it's just everybody's a zombie trying to get ready for the show, and sometimes pre-show is just like a ton of fun. So
yeah, and it's like, look, I'm not gonna force it. We're gonna take it as it comes, and then we'll get to it when we get to it. So all that to say, this is us getting to it. Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of What You Doing podcast. with me. I don't know if I ever say my name in these intros, but I figure I say it in the intro I eventually record.
Mhm.
But that's a very fun stress of like, am I going to do the thing in the future that I'm failing to do now? I don't know. This is a science fiction short story. Joining me today, John Boyle, writer and editor at Breitbart. John, say hello.
Hello, everyone. I'm John, aka Resident Bard, in basically any social media platform that I'm on, and I as Matt said, I write and edit games.
He is joining me today to speak about, as I'm clicking through all of the tabs that I have opened so that I have all of the information in front of me that I need. Bonds Between, coming soon to Kickstarter for Zine Quest. Very excited. Talking to a lot of people lately about Zine Quest stuff. Actually, is this technically a Zine Quest product? Am I talking out of my butt?
No, it's a Zine Quest project.
Okay.
I think we're shooting for like that zine sweet spot of like 20 to 30 pages. And it kind of follows a similar theme with our other Zine Quest projects where we shoot for kind of like weird esoteric little games.
Mm-hmm.
So like, yeah, I think this sits solidly inside like the Zine Quest kind of parameters. Short, digest sized, kind of funky.
Yeah. And I think that's like exactly the sort of acting ethos of Zine Quest is something short, something effective, something complete. I talked about it a bit in the last episode, just this kind of idea of do the thing, have it done, have it be something that you're proud of, don't turn out garbage, obviously, but like make something small, make something compact, make something, a little smaller than maybe you might normally. But honestly, that's what makes Zine Quest partially so much fun. Is you don't have to spin these huge things up. You can keep the idea small and focused and kind of on topic.
Yeah, like honestly, I think that's where Bree and I, my co-owner and the artist for so far all of our games, like that's the space that we really thrive in, is like making a very like small kind of tight game. One of the games that we released last year that's done very, very well for us is called Axolotl with a Gun, and I really cannot sell that game any better than the title does. It's what's written on the tin.
I told you what it's called. There you go.
And like Bonds Between is kind of a continuation of our Zine Quest like tradition of making these funky little ritual games, right? So our first Zine Quest project was Terminus, which was a game that like you take with you on a walk and then imagine that you're the ghost of whatever place you're walking through, like reliving its memory. Last year's was I Crave the Loop, and that was like a little tactical roguelike game that you play while you eat a snack. And you're trying to evade and outwit a hungry eldritch creature who wants nothing more than your midnight Fruit Loops. Because I own cats, and that's what owning cats is like.
Yeah. Yes. I very recently got a cat, and yes, that is.
If you are anywhere in your home and they are somewhere else, doesn't matter how asleep they are, how awake they are. If you make the crinkle of plastic, the sound of a can lid popping. Hell, like one of my old cats used to, if you opened the right cupboard in the kitchen, only one of the cupboards that made a very particular sound when it opened, that we also happened to keep the tuna can in, she would just come bolting, like sub 5 seconds from anywhere else, no matter what she was doing. And she was there like, tuna, father, for me.
They know. They're even our older one who's mostly behaved. My partner was trying to lead him off so we could let the other cat out for a little bit, and he was asleep, and then she crinkled her cheese stick and he went just from asleep to 100% locked on. And I'm like, you can never. I'm like I might have trusted you, and every day I learn anew that I should never.
There's a sixth sense that you develop when you own a cat that's like a spatial awareness of uncovered food. Like it, however big your house or apartment is, you always know if there is an uncovered cat palatable food or drink in it. It's just a thing that happens. I walk downstairs, and halfway down the stairs, I'll realize there's something that's got butter in it. my desk.
I'm not gonna leave that plate there. That's not. No,
Yeah.
that's too low. I'm just gonna take that with me.
Yep. Back up the stairs, grab it, come back down, like 100%. But yeah, so this year's game, I think the best way that I can sum it up is a home improvement simulator, but your modern fantasy dragons. Uh, the game is very much for anybody who kind of likes collaging or telling like stories about little objects and stuff. If you're emotionally attached to like little tchotchkes and things, this is a game that's very much kind of written for you.
It's a long way to say gay people, John, but I get you.
Yeah. I mean, that's also a running theme in our games as a company.
Just on the back, it's just like so this is a game for queer people. All right, cool. That's
Do I have it here? One of the other zines we released was a riff on an old Tumblr meme.
There you go.
Longsword, Glock, bat, taser. But yeah, the gist of the game is that you play as a pair of bonded dragons who have neighboring layers that have inherited like a domain in some state of disrepair. And it's your job to kind of fix it up. And the resolution mechanic we use for the game is a deck of cards that represents your hoard of magical items. You use your hoard of magical items to like arrange the cards and cast spells to fix up your domain. But you've got a little dragon buddy who neighbors you, and we don't want to do the dragon wars again because you pissed off your neighbor by blowing up their rose bush. So
that would do it.
Yeah, like that.
Wars have started for less.
War.
Yeah, wars have started for less.
And so the idea is that you have to like trade cards and gifts with each other, and like kind of help each other with your projects and like negotiate how your spell work is going to happen. And kind of build this rapport with your neighbor, because the game is inherently co-op. It's a 2-player co-op game, and so it's all about like the relationship between these two dragons, but also like the hoard of items that they kind of collect and build and use to expand their layers and their collections.
Yeah, I was reading through the Kickstarter page, and I got really into the trading of gifts, aka the cards. I got really into this idea of and listener, I don't know if this is how the game is played. This is the image I built in my head reading the Kickstarter page, right? Is two people coming together to play this game with their decks of cards, and exchanging the cards and using some of them over the course of play. And then they go their separate ways. And then one of those players independently goes and plays with someone else with their deck of cards, and you're changing cards, and you end up with all of these different types of cards in your deck with different backs and different suits and different faces. And they all look completely different. And I was amazed by that concept. Just the small, very very narratively packed illustration of play and change, and in something as simple as I have a different jack, something like that. I was just so enamored by that idea.
Yeah, and like that was kind of our goal, is that you would have like this storied artifact of play. Because one of the games that I know one of our collaborators really enjoys is called Beak, Feather, and Bone by Tyler Crumrine of Possible Worlds Games. Sorry, I had to think for a minute about the name of the company.
Possible. What's the next word? Like, I've been there all the time. You're like, what's the second word? The second word.
Tyler wrote it. What's the name of his company?
Tyler, Tyler, right? Everybody knows Tyler. Yeah. We don't need to talk about
it. But yeah, so which is a world building kind of coloring game, where like the way that it works is you take turns passing around a map and you color in a section of it, and then what color kind of goes there helps build out the lore of this town or city or like place in the countryside. what factions have influence here. And like it's a great like standalone storytelling exercise or like a world building thing for your long-standing fantasy campaigns. But the other cool thing about it is at the end of it you have a cool like colored little map.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just like, oh, I have my notes from this session where somebody said something really cool. You have this thing that you and a few other people made, and that's kind of the fun of this too, is what you've described. Like I have this jack that I was using to film some of the things that you can do with it, and it's not heavily altered. Like I dunked it in some water, and that's all that's happened to it. But also I have this 3 of diamonds that I've changed the color of, right? And now it's the 3 of diamonds, but it's a black card, or like this 2 where some of it is burned off. And the more you kind of like trade, or like I don't have one here, but like Bree drew some pictures on a few cards as we were like testing and working on some videos. And so like I'm very enchanted by the idea that you have like a group of a few people that you play bonds between with. And at the end of, your season of casting 12 spells, or like a couple of like in-universe years, you've all just got a really kind of cool, like drawn on, painted on, burnt, cut and pasted together, like all kinds of different card backs, this storied artifact of play that you get to carry forward with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's what just I just latched onto so hard. Like the idea of going to something like Gen Con and meeting up with somebody, like, oh, we'll hang out and we'll have lunch by the food trucks. And while you have lunch, you play this, and then you go home and you play with a friend at your favorite coffee shop, and you're bringing the threads of the game forward, in this very interesting way that like I get really into tabletop games sometimes, especially like mechanics like that, where it's just like, no, nothing fucking else does that. Call of Duty doesn't do that shit. This is tabletop, man. This is the sauce of like I got this 5 playing with my friend at Gen Con, and now I'm gonna give it to you as part of this, and you're gonna cut it off, and then I'm gonna draw a little thing. Like, again, I don't know if these are mechanics. I'm making half of this up, but this is the thing. This is the sauce, man.
If I open the list of card alterations that are in the draft right now, we have altering a card.
I've been playing a lot of Balatro lately. And so I think this is hitting the same thing, where it's like, why is your king green? Listen, magic works in mysterious ways. That's all I'm gonna.
I need you to understand that it was a rusty copper mug gifted to me by a dragon that lives in like 130-year-old American Foursquare in St. Paul.
Yeah.
Like they found it sitting in their basement when they moved in and cleaned, and were like, yes, this will go perfectly in my collection of cups, which is, I guess, a thing that I collect. It's
thing I've decided now to collect. I have 7 of them. This is a collection now.
Yep. It's just how it works. Like you joked earlier, like, yes, a game for queer people, or like a game. Honestly, like I feel like I've written this game kind of for like those kids who came home with pockets full of shiny rocks, but like a very specific kind of shiny, not just any like shiny like pebble they found on the playing ground. It was like I'm looking for a very specific type of like quartz, probably in this pea gravel.
Yeah, I when I go visit my nephew, if I'm very lucky, he will present me with a box of rocks that he has found, and he will become the rock merchant, and he will sell me a rock. Which is, wonderful, because he's so kind as to sell me a rock. And then I carry that rock around with me the rest of the day, and then I give it to his mother before we leave.
Exactly. The cycle completes. But yeah, like the game is very much about that kind of like, show me the things that you are into, or show me your stuff, the objects, the things that are important to you, because like so that I can know you, right? And it's kind of cool, I think, because that's representative of the way that we take interest in other people's interests. We were talking in the pre-show about Marvel Rivals and how neither of us are really super into that game, but some of my friends are, and they've given me a character to play that is passably enjoyable, and it's a nice way to just kind of spend some time with them. It's kind of a like I get to experience this competitive like kind of frenetic thing that my friends enjoy doing, and like I get to hang out and come to know them a little bit better because of that. This thing like that we exchange.
Yeah, for me, my Marvel Rivals experience is my friend who plays a lot of Marvel Rivals and will come to me with like, "Who's this guy?" Or "They got a new outfit. Like, what's this from?" And I'll be like, "Okay, so that's from this storyline. So what? Okay, so what happened here was."
Like sitting on my pile of cute Jeff appearances in comics that I've been slowly accruing. I'm like, oh my god, have you guys seen when Jeff did this thing?
I hope for the next battle pass we get Jeff like this, and it's just like, yeah, maybe that'd be good.
I need Jeff in the little dolphin outfit that he put on so that he could go surfing at the beach because he wanted to swim but knew that he was a shark and it would scare people. That's what I need in this world.
I don't want to give them ideas on ways to like take money from people, but like that's a solid idea. Like we both know you're gonna do it, so you may as well give them the thing that they want.
Exactly. But yeah, like one of the I think lines was like, show me your horde so that I may know you, was one of the kind of driving design like ideas that we had. We wanted the feeling of trading stuff and telling stories about it. Like, here's this thing that's important to me, and by giving it to you and telling you about it, then you'll come to know me better.
Mm-hmm. And I really connect with the experience of sharing your interests with people. I think that's a lot of, I don't want to say nerd culture specifically, but I feel like that's just like, it's hard to say that it's not nerd avergent queer culture, but like it just feels so just like, this is, look at my stuff is so cool, and then the other person goes like, yeah, your stuff is super cool, here's my stuff, and then you just get to yell at each other about your stuff all the time, and that's great.
Like, one of my friend's husband, like there's some like he's very into board games, but also is like he pays attention to sports, which is not something that I'm particularly interested in. But like still, when I go over, one of the best ways to, I think, like spark conversation with people is to ask them about their interests, right? People are seldom more excited than when they get to talk about something that they know a lot about. And so like a question as simple as like, how are the Vikings doing this season? I get to learn a little bit about football that I might not have otherwise learned because I don't really engage with it very much. And they get to talk about something that they're very passionate about.
I think that touches on, a thing not about this, but a thing that I've been trying to get better about over the last few years. And I think more people could, not at anybody in particular, but I think I see a lot of people do it, of dismissing other people's interests because they don't fit in the sort of milieu of your interests. Like I remember in high school and a little bit into college, and especially for nerd people, it was very common to dismiss interest in sports. It was very common to just be like, oh, the sports ball. And it's a thing looking back where it's like, well, that was just kind of being shitty for no reason. Like if no one around is like sports, like why are we talking about how we don't like it? And if someone around does like it, why are we just kind of being a jerk to that person? And so I've been intentional, and I've been encouraging other people to be more intentionally positive with their interactions with people. A very good friend of mine has been talking about approaching things, especially on like social media spaces and the internet in general, of like approaching things with kindness, approaching things with positivity, in a way that I think it's, hey, we're recording this on January 20th. In a way that I think it's like, it's yeah, difficult to be positive sometimes. Right. And, we were talking about it in the pre-show, like the logging off, touching grass, and, it's used as a pejorative, but also like, sometimes you just got to disconnect and kind of re-center. And I think that's a lot of it, is approaching things with kindness, is being able to sort of step away, recenter with yourself, sort of readjust, rebalance, refocus who you are. because that, that's for me how I feel when I get a little too online, get a little too, a little too zany, is I'm getting farther away from who I want to be. And it's why, again, we were talking about this in the pre-show, why I appreciate I've been finding more games like this, these ritual games of things that happen around the things you already do. And as a person who I've played games my entire life in various ways, I love the idea of not gamifying, that's not the word at all, but just introducing like whimsy and play into the normal spaces of your life, like the regular spaces of your life.
Yeah, and like that's something that's so, like, I would say very important to us in a lot of the games that we write, like in this genre, where it's like, when I was a kid walking home from elementary school, I would listen to like the kind of bare fall trees like creaking in the autumn wind, and I would tell myself just wild stories, because like I grew up on a diet of fantasy media. I read Harry Potter and Percy Jackson and The Hobbit and a good chunk of the Lord of the Rings series, or had it read to me by my parents. And so like all of a sudden I'm envisioning myself in Mirkwood taking a walk home from school. That's like 6 blocks or something like that. And that's the kind of, I think, experience that I want these games to evoke, is doing those, finding little moments of magic in the kind of everyday mundanity.
Yeah, and all those series you mentioned are series that are very focused and interested in obviously the capital M magic of nature, but also the lowercase m magic of nature, just the magic of nature existing and of green spaces and natural spaces. Yeah.
And it's in part, I think, also why we chose like dragons as the characters, like that you play as. Dragons are very like proud and particular. They tend to be like very singular in their focus, right? We think of dragons, we think of stuff like Smaug the dragon from The Hobbit is, I think, something that'll come to the mind of many people who are steeped in any amount with fantasy media. Like proud, territorial, singular, like gold hoarding monsters. And I think it's very, I think it was an interesting space to explore, to look like, well, like, what does a dragon that lives in your backyard look like? Not like on the day that he goes, once a year to the Great Dragon Council and works great dragon magics. Like, what does it look like for that guy to look at the vacant lot next to the house where he lives, or the little like woods that he lives in, and go, oh, the gnomes are at it again. I should probably keep them from like digging a bunch of tunnels.
Just a dragon in like a tank top holding a cup of coffee. Like, oh, come on, man.
I can't believe that the people who lived here a century ago planted mint in the ground in a planter on concrete in another planter, guys. Like, do you know how much magical energy it takes to get rid of this regular plant? I like the idea of taking these creatures that are kind of, as we were describing, where it's easy to get like kind of cordoned off in online like echo chambers, or sectioned off into little parts of the algorithm that keep you online and engaged, and in many cases kind of upset, and disconnecting, and approaching people and life with kindness and genuine like interest. Yeah. Not like, oh, sports, what a dumb thing. Like, well, what is it that you find interesting about this?
It's why I think play is so important, because it's fun, and it's fun, and that's good. Fun is good. But 2, it forces you, and I think intentionally, I'm going to use the word forces intentionally. It forces you to engage with another person for a shared thing. And I think in ways that some people don't expect, that's a very positive, that has a very positive effect of like, it at least for me, it's helped me understand over, however many years, the sort of the power of people coming together to do a thing. And, you know, as I was talking about earlier, like the joy of, you know, tabletop games, TTRPGs specifically over other games is when you come together to play a TTRPG, like you're inherently creating. And you know, a thing exists now that didn't exist before, and you had a hand in creating that. And if you're like me and you get a little emotional about things sometimes, that can be a very powerful thing. And that can become a story that you tell friends later on, you tell new friends, you tell people you hadn't known at that time. And so, you know, getting back to the cards, like we were talking about, like you know, this sort of transformative idea. And I love the idea, like you said, of like transposing this vision of the dragon, seeing the vacant lot, right? Transposing that to you as an individual, and, you know, activating that kind of that manner of thinking to you of like this is a problem that needs to be solved, as opposed to just this is a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, listen, maybe I'm getting too wild with it. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. Maybe I'm going too far with it. That's fine. That's what we do. That's what I do.
Mm-hmm.
But I always enjoy reading a game that I could immediately like feel the avenue of thought. You know, I feel like I can feel the like purpose of play. Like here's what they want me to be feeling. Here's what they want me to be thinking. Here's how they want me to be approaching these things.
Yeah, like that's that feeling of like being on a long car trip as a kid and looking out the window and making up stories about the stuff that you saw is the kind of feeling that we want to evoke. You know, that kind of that being grounded in the stuff around you is kind of like very much what we're shooting for. So I'm glad it comes through, because it's very much important to us when we work on games and stuff. It's I think it's kind of informed, of course, by like that sense of like childhood wonder, or you know, childlike wonder that I want people to keep looking at the world through. But when I was an English major, I took an entire scimitar.
I bought a whole scimitar.
I brought a whole scimitar to class, and then I was kicked out of school. No, I took an entire like semester-long seminar about William Blake, which is not an author that you usually engage with as an undergrad because he's very dense. But one of William Blake's kind of principal things in his poetry and his prose was that, you know, he demanded that people like kind of sit up and be present and participate in their lives, and like not kind of just inure themselves to whatever was happening, whether it was like for the purpose of creating art or for like, you know, staying involved politically. He had a lot to say about that. I think the line that people like to quote is, if the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to people as it is, infinite, which is, you know, very lofty sounding. But essentially the guy was like, sometimes, like my wife and I, you just need to throw your stinky clothes from making, you know, acid etching copper plates and painting them all day into the wash, and then sit around in your backyard naked and pretend that you're Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. You know? Maybe high on paint fumes, maybe just having a good time.
People had wild lives back then, let me tell you. Some people just get to have experiences that I will never approximate.
But, you know, that kind of, you know, don't let yourself drive past the same park 100 times without looking at it and going, wow, those trees are really pretty. You know, that's kind of the energy that I want games like this to bring, because it's easy to kind of just set yourself on autopilot and cruise through your daily life and, you know, kind of go through gets, you know, settled into your routine, and then forget like why you do some of those things or why you enjoy some of them.
I love it. When I was reading the Kickstarter page, I was immediately thinking of places that I wanted to play this with my partner, because she will love this. I showed this to her and she was very excited, and I was like, all right, so we could go to the park, and then there's the further part of the park that you got to hike a little bit, but that would definitely be fun.
Yeah.
And so it'll be it will be a well-traveled game. I'm very excited.
And like that's the stuff that I love to hear. I love when people tell me about their games of like Terminus or like the things that they imagine when they play I Crave the Loop. These are always it's fun to hear about like the places that people take these to and the kinds of like stories, because it's always so very different from the stuff that I've done, because the joy of these games is that they ask you to look for stuff in your environment as part of like the ritual component, or find a place that's meaningful to you to play. And so when you do that, like it immediately shifts to like, okay, well, we're both nerds who like tabletop RPGs. Surely we have similar tastes, right? Sure, similar enough. But the things that I think are interesting and the things that somebody else who plays Bonds Between or Terminus or I Crave the Loop are interesting or that stand out to them are different. And then the personal experience that they bring to it is different. So like they're prompted to think along a different, the media that they've consumed is different, prompted to think along a different avenue of creation that I would have walked down. And that's just, it's super cool. It's super cool to me to see that.
Right. And like you said, there are things that you would never have thought of that you're like, oh, that makes perfect sense. Now, like being presented, I wouldn't have thought of this in 100 years. And now that we're sitting here, yeah, that rules. So to get to questions, we don't ramble the whole time. Try to be professional about this. So you and Bree design games together, as you have for a few years. When did you sort of come together and sort of start designing as a duo, as a pair?
We met at Gen Con in 2019, played a bunch of games together, freelanced on a bunch of similar projects, and then eventually like I started writing games and had her do art for them because we were friends and I was very familiar with her, and I was like, hey, this seems like something you would like doing art for. Do you want to do art for it? And we did that a few times with like some one-page games and some smaller stuff. And I'm like, maybe we should do this like by design instead of by accident. And so
maybe we should head into this with me writing a thing and you drawing a thing, and that's the get-go.
Yeah, it's assumed, and then like we can figure out like the business side of things. And so we've been doing this for a couple of years now. Where I think Terminus was kind of like our first official project together as Breitbart Games. And you know, we've kind of just been steadily trying to like put out a couple of games a year, a few zines, and then step up going to conventions and do all of the fun small business stuff of like finding games retailers and stuff to sell our games and to kind of like expand a little bit. So it helps us do it more and more full time. But yeah, the short version is we met at Gen Con, became kind of fast TTRPG friends, and then somewhere about 2.5 years down the line, one of us was like, hey, want to be business partners? And the other one was like, we're already business partners.
We've been partners for 6 months. I already sent you tax paperwork. What are you doing?
Exactly.
I miss Gen Con. I don't know. I went to Gen Con like 2-3 years in a row, and it was an amazing experience. I don't know if I'll ever go back, but it's very powerful to go from what feels like a very small hobby and not an insular hobby, but a thing that you know, I think it's very easy to feel like sometimes your hobbies, you're like, I'm like the only person that's into this, or I'm the only person that likes this type of game or something like this. And then you go to something like Gen Con where you're like, I'm the only person that likes this dead card game that you can only buy on eBay. And then you go to Gen Con and it's like, oh, here's 40 people in a room doing a tournament all weekend. Do you want to buy in? It's like $20. And you're just like, oh, cool. And just imagine that for every game.
I frequently describe Gen Con as the most fun I will ever have standing in lines because of that experience exactly. Like there's nowhere else that I can be standing in line for something and know that I share interests with like everybody in a 30-foot radius of me.
Yeah.
You know, standing in line for coffee, probably not. Standing in line for a game at Gen Con or like at the Dispel Dice booth or whatever, like guarantee that a bunch of us can talk about Gloomhaven or something, right?
Yeah, it's very, you know, getting back to the community thing that keeps coming up. It felt amazing to be there and to see, not even just like in the dealer room where you see a ton of people, but walking through the convention center, walking through any of the rooms, walking through any of the spaces, there are people gaming everywhere like there are people in the hallway, like outside of panels, like playing, Magic or playing cards or playing some little, and it's very, it feels good. It's that positive feeling I keep coming back to. But I love, you mentioned like fast TTRPG friends. I've never made friends faster than in the TTRPG space. People keep ragging me about the podcast where it's like, I have like different people that I want to have on and talk about different stuff. And then it's like, oh man, I'm talking to some new people for the podcast. It's very exciting. They're like, what do they do? What do they do? And I'm like, they're TTRPG people. And I'm like, I know a lot of TTRPG people. There's a lot of them. They're around.
It's also a much smaller industry than people refer to it sometimes as like the industry or whatever. And I'm like, there's like 500 of us in a trench coat, which really isn't that many.
Yeah. It's not hard to just like, you just imagine like a crowded room and you just look across at somebody and you're like, hey.
That's most of the RPG industry right there. When you get the dealer hall at like PAX Unplugged or Gen Con, like you can point to a lot of the people who are doing some really, you can find it's just such a dense collection of people who both enjoy, engaging in the hobby, from like playing games, running games, to also like people who are doing just tons of really cool stuff making games in there.
I've so many people I know went to PAX and I was like, jerks. with your travel. So you mentioned you've done 3 Zine Quest projects so far, like the last 3 years. We touched on it a little bit in the beginning. What draws you to make a project for Zine Quest? I think Zine Quest is a really interesting initiative, and to Zine Month, the idea of zines, to separate it from the Kickstarter thing slightly. Like, what is it about the idea of making a game in the format of a zine that it excites you, that interests you, to make you do it again and again and again?
I, as a creator, the kind of person that I am, I love just really small, kind of tight games that do the thing that they do really, really well. Well, I talked a little bit about it, but originally I was an English major with the intent of being an English teacher, and so I took like a fair amount of writing courses and stuff. And one of the like common pieces of wisdom that I hear for like fledgling writers, or what a lot of I know creative writers will do, is kind of cut their teeth on short fiction, short stories, because it's a good way to kind of build up those skills of like, you don't have a lot of space to waste in a 5-page story, right? If you're writing 2,000 words, you have a lot less room to meander than if you're writing a 50,000 word novel. And I feel very much the same way about games. I love taking an idea that I have about something and going, how best can I distill this experience down to its most essential parts and really evoke like a powerful feeling of a particular kind of play. So for Bonds Between, we've been talking a lot about like that feeling of like talking about your hobby to somebody. For Terminus, it's the sense of wonder when you finding that sense of like wonder when you go and take a walk somewhere and thinking about, just being present in a place. For Axolotl with a Gun, it's like, I want this to be like an arcade style tabletop RPG where like you slot in a quarter and then you are a little weird amphibian with a gun slaying out for the next 90 minutes of tabletop RPG play. Just tell me the goofiest thing that you want to do to that pile of like tech bro robots over there trying to suck up your lake, and we're going to roll with it. And I really, really enjoy working in that space with games, both creatively and because like I know well the struggle of trying to get people to move away from their like long form campaigns and take a break to play something else. And so I really like games that you can pick up, know what it is in a couple of pages, make characters in like 15 or 20 minutes tops, and then play a game like you would pick up a board game off your shelf. I think those are the things that really draw me to zines. Is they're great because creatively they're a fun challenge of how do I make this kind of airtight, the most distilled version of this experience possible, and also like they're really easy to access.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm finding more and more the sort of joy in a like 50-page. I don't even know what the size of paper is. If I was cooler, I would know I would know all the different zine sizes. I'm sure I have a lot of friends that could tell me. Just something small and floppy, and maybe it has a construction paper cover of just like, what's the game about? Your frogs. Oh, man.
Let me see if I still have this in here.
So when you pull out all the production samples, you're like, oh, I made all of these to test the sizes.
No. This is a game that somebody gave to me at the Possum Creek Games meetup in Indy this year at Gen Con. I think it's still there. It is. This is like the purest form of zine, I think. Like my lights are a little bit bright, but what this says is hamster LARP.
Okay, that is what I thought it said. I was like, I think that says hamster LARP.
Yeah. It says, when you are in the tunnels, you are a hamster. This is a hamster tunnel. And it's got like a copy-pasted picture of a tunnel in black and white. It's a skywalk or something. Mm-hmm. Can you draw a hamster here? There's a little drawing of a hamster there. He's wearing a beanie and glasses, and he's asleep because I was tired when I was handed this.
I love that.
Your hamster name could be Nibbles, a name with ham in it. Nimsetsku, another good hamster name. What color is your hamster? What other qualities does your hamster have? And then on the back it says, is it a bit too hot in here? The sun beaming through the plastic. This is no place for a hamster.
Perfect. That's it. That's all you need. We've
hamster
peaked.
LARP.
We've peaked.
Yeah. Like, that's the kind of like weird, funky stuff that you can do with zines, and I love it.
Yeah, I love the idea of just like, here's a piece of paper, I folded it 4 times, I wrote some nonsense in there. Go play it.
And now, when I'm walking through tunnels, because I have read this game and drew a little hamster in it, I think about being a hamster a non-zero amount of the time that I am in a tunnel. I drive through like a tunnel on my way to go to my gym, a couple times a week. And sometimes I will think to myself, I'm just a little hamster in a beanie driving a car with my little bag of chalk, ready to go climbing.
little sunflowers, just, I love it. Yep.
Time for me to go run on my hamster wheel. Like,
God, I love games.
Same.
It's so stupid, but it's so good. It's so like, it's stupid in all the best ways.
Here, let me see if I can make up
anything that can make you think about being a hamster at a random point in your daily life. Like, I don't mean to sound haughty, but that's art, baby.
Yep.
I know it when I see it. That's art.
I would struggle to. I don't know if I can find. I don't know if the author is even online. That's again one of the best things about this stuff. Like, I don't think they have an itch page. I don't even know if they have social media.
Who gave this to me? They were just passing them out. There was just a ton of people.
This name could be a pseudonym. I would have no way of knowing. Mm-hmm. An interaction as fleeting as a summer breeze, frankly.
just two ships. Pizza. 2 ships passing the night and forever changed.
Yeah, we shared pizza. Talked about Yuzeba's bed and breakfast. They gave me hamster LARP. Bria and I drew hamsters in the little zine, and then talked about being hamsters at Gen Con, and then we went off to do other RPG stuff.
It's beautiful. I'm trying to find the I don't even know how to find this on Kickstarter. I backed up RPG forever ago. Never mind. I don't remember the name of the projects. It's not going to be important. If I find it, it'll be in the show notes. Look in the show notes. But it was a 1-page TTRPG about playing as a goblin. And the
favorite topic.
Right. You know exactly what you're into if a game says you are a goblin. You're like, all right, here we go. Or no, I think it was orcs. Again, it's been a while since I thought about this game. And what the designer did was they wrote out the one page, and then they tore every page in half. So they printed out, like, let's say 50 copies. They tore it in half. And then each person that backed it got a half. And then each half of the page had a unique rule variant. So each person had a full playable version of the game because of the way they'd done their layout. Each version had a unique rule variant. So every copy of the game is in essence its own unique version of the game.
God, I love games.
Yeah, I love games, man. And then the person who designed that game dressed up as a goblin and handed them out to people at the one Gen Con I couldn't go to. And I was just like, this is it. We can't do better than this. All we can do is try and fail.
One of our little games that's my favorite thing that very seldom do people find and bring back to us, but every time they do, it goes up on either Bree or I's bulletin board, is we have a little game called Missives from the Void, and it fits on like a little card about this big, and it basically just says, "Congratulations, you found a missive from the void. This is a letter that an item that somebody left behind." They're all actually agents doing field work on critical missions. So if you see a lost or forgotten object, write what it is and what it's actually doing. And then if it's garbage, dispose of it. And then bring this back to us and you can get $5 off a game or something like that. But it's just a weird little game about like, oh, that water bottle's probably not supposed to be there.
That's suspicious. I love that. It's why I love weird games. Like, people play Call of Cthulhu all day long and it's great and you'll have a great time. But also, sometimes you want a weird little game about being a goblin that in my copy of the game, you can have a horse. That's cool.
And in somebody else's copy of the game, it's all about collecting funny hats. Like,
people posted a couple, I think this was during the G+ days, and it's like one of them could have psychic powers. And I was like, that's cool. I'm excited. I'm gonna put it in the show notes. I've committed to put it in the show notes. I'm gonna find it.
God. But yeah, that's the kind of stuff I adore. I love when people do weird, cool stuff that's like kind of transient, Mm-hmm. Like tear your game in half, hand it to somebody, and then walk away.
Yeah. The joy of these at like a base level is the impermanence of the experience. Mm-hmm. There's something so like tactically different playing a TTRPG than it is playing a board game. Because I'm going to break out a board game, I'm going to put out all the pieces, we're going to play with the pieces, and the pieces are all going to go back in the box. And one of the biggest innovations in the last couple years of board games is the concept that maybe all of those pieces don't go back in the box, or maybe sometimes new pieces arrive. And when you say it like that, it doesn't sound as groundbreaking as it is. It's just like, oh, maybe sometimes you get some new cards.
Mm-hmm.
But that was like kind of the idea of board games, was it has these pieces and the pieces go out and the pieces go back. But when you're playing a tabletop game, the pieces are different every time, even if it's the same people, especially if you're playing different games. And seeing how those pieces change over the course of a game. Like I think there's a number of RPGs that are starting to incorporate physical components in interesting ways, that are starting to do interesting things with having bits, hey, stupid, this game is a great example of like, you have a deck of cards and that deck of cards is fundamentally going to change.
I might ask you to go bury one of those cards in your yard and maybe never see it again. Like, that's a thing that can happen.
That rules. That's like the coolest thing.
Maybe you find it when you're digging up your garden in the spring and you're like, right, I put this here, you know?
The World We Left Behind is the game I spent the last minute trying to remember, of just like something that seems so simple as like writing on a card and changing that thing like forever. Like I feel like I've said this too many times. People listening to this are gonna be like, Matt, shut up. Talk about something else, please. But you know, it's the impermanence and the immutability of these games that I think, for me at least, is what makes them so exciting. It's why I think what makes them exciting for people overall. It's why people design them. It's why people play them. It's why we're continuing to see, you know, different things.
Yeah, like Zine Month genuinely is one of my favorite times of the year. Like I cut my teeth as an editor, like editing a ton of Zine Quest projects, and that's everything from, you know, like some Mort Borg supplements to like a weird solo like game where you manage a sad space zoo run by an AI that collects, like, is trying to collect one of everything in the galaxy. Another one where, like,
You know, I was curious what you meant by sad space zoo, but then you got to the end and I understood.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, why is it sad? Oh no, I got it.
Yeah, it that's an impossible task. And like another one by the same author that was like a kind of a cool world, so another solo kind of cool world building game where you're like a spirit trying to manage like a group of heroes adventuring, but you're not like powerful enough to do anything other than like subtly kind of like send dreams, or, you know, you're not here to like make them more powerful. You're here to keep them from like getting in a fight and hurting each other, or like doing something stupid, or like, you know, your influence is limited to like kind of sending like sensations or dreams or memories or like little kind of prophetic visions or whatever. And I was like, this is kind of cool. The game's called Caretaker, I think, or Caregiver, something like that, by Aaron Aviram. But it's a neat little game, just like this funky little thing about being a guardian spirit trying to take care of some dumb adventurers.
Just everybody loves a game where you take care of stupid little Borbos. Just like, no, come on, please do the thing.
Just because you like stick with metal on it and they like magic doesn't mean that you can't get along.
Yeah, just
come on, guys. They touched a cursed object. I think they grabbed a cursed sword because it looked really cool. God damn it. I'm gonna have to go charge up in the light of the full moon again for this one.
Yeah, this is all right. Yeah, all right. This is gonna be a whole thing. That brings us full circle. That brings us back to the healer experience of just the light of just like, why did you do that? Why did you think that was going to go well for you? Now it's my problem.
Yeah, back to pre-show talking about the support experience in hero shooters, where somebody stands in the open with no cover and gets beamed by the entire enemy team, and then goes, "Why didn't you heal me?" And it's like, my man.
Yeah, no, it was a waste. It would be a waste of efforts.
The numbers. I want you to think a minute about the numbers in this situation. 6 of them. They deal any amount of damage. One of me, your health pool. This is a simple arithmetic.
Right. There's 5 and 1, and that math isn't going to math.
One of the small things about the book that we're kind of excited about is that it's a square, and that's very enchanting to our layout designer, who's been dying to make a square book.
I do enjoy that it's a square.
Mm-hmm. I do, like, very photo album feeling.
Yeah, it's the small things that, like, it's the small details that you notice sometimes. You know, it's the little ways that it grabs you that your like conscious brain doesn't recognize, but your lizard brain picks up and is like, well, that's not regular. That's not how the always looks. And it's what makes you like stop for that half second and go, well, hang on. What are you doing? What's going on over here?
What's happening here?
I had something else. I'm not going to think of it. And that's why I write things down. That's why.
true. I have a little note card in front of, like, I always keep like a little note card or like a journal page in front of me when I'm chatting on like a podcast or like a stream or something like that, just so that like if I have an idea, I can like quick write down 2 or 3 words while I'm listening, so that I don't, arrive at a pause in the conversation, reply to somebody, and I can look down and go, oh, and by the way,
I need to get better. Because I'm writing them in a digital notebook because I have my phone more often than I do my journal, but also if I was better about having my journal around, then I could write down the ideas and then they'd be available.
Mm-hmm.
I went back and listened to the second episode ever of Party of One podcast, if you're familiar with it, from Jeff Stormer.
Yeah.
And there was, I was listening to the third episode, but then we ended up listening to the second episode, and there was some like weird audio stuff and all of that. And I was like, this makes me feel better about the difficulties I have. Because it's like, yeah, I also still don't know what I'm doing. And at that time, Jeff probably didn't know what he was doing. And that makes me feel better overall.
It's a learning. Hell, if you go back and look at the first like 10, 20 streams of Critical Role, who are, ostensibly a multi-million-dollar company right now, there's some real scuffed stuff happening on those early Geek and Sundry streams, from like the audio quality to like video.
I was actually just talking to my friend about that. We were talking about Titan's Grave, because of my friend's Discord, he loves Titan's Grave, the Will Wheaton actual play that was happening at that time. Mm-hmm. And they were like, Titan's Grave was so good. It was tightly edited. It was pre-recorded. They had a lot of graphics. They had rule stuff. And I was like, yeah, it's really weird that the show that did absolutely none of that is the one that got really popular. But that's how it goes. It's, can't predict it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't know. It's sort of the same with us. We can never really tell which game's going to be a smash hit and which one's not. Like there are plenty of our games that sell pretty well, that people like and think are really, really cool. And then I write Axolotl with a gun, and we have to reprint, after 6 months because it's sold so crazy well. Because people are like, oh my god, I want to be an Axolotl with a gun.
Well, yeah. It's a very evocative title. Hey, do you want to play Axolotl with a gun? Like, all right.
You don't have to ask what are we gonna do.
Right. It's like okay. All right. Let's see what happens.
And this is just an enormous. We're on video, so I can do this. This is just an enormous shout out to Bree as an artist, because the cover is also extremely compelling. Oh,
Bree's art is great. I was actively just looking at Bree's website yesterday. I was just poking around.
Yeah, she's phenomenal. I am so unbelievably privileged to be able to work with her as much as I do.
The cover for Terminus is amazing.
Yeah, and a fun fact about that, Terminus originally was a game that we wrote in the fall of 21, I believe, for a game jam. We wrote like a one-page front and back edition of it. And I was like, Bree, do you think you could draw like a silhouette in like a limited color palette with like a cool kind of landscape inside it? And she's like, yeah, I can do that. And we banged the entirety of the game out in about 3 or 4 days. The one-page version of it in 3 or 4 days for a game jam, and then people really liked it and the concept, and so I was like, well, hell yeah. And then we kickstarted it. Every time she would send me a new piece of like tarot art, I would be like, this is the coolest thing that you've ever drawn.
Just every day, this is the new greatest thing ever.
Yeah. I still sometimes just open to the page with the devil illustration on it, and I'm like, god, this is so
I always have one. I've got one final question always. But this is me kicking myself in the butt to get better about using my journal and writing stuff down. But so every podcast I come up with a question over the course of the podcast. And it's 3 something, and it's tangentially related to whatever we're talking about. And it's just, hey, here's a weird curveball question that's not really about this, but we get to have a little conversation about it.
Oh, hell yeah.
So what are your favorite 3 dragons in any media?
Oh, my favorite 3 dragons in any media.
Yeah.
God this is like one of those classic moments where somebody's like, "What kind of music do you listen to?" And you're like, I couldn't
What's
name
music?
a band.
I
If I like right now.
tuba.
So you listen to ska? What? No, I don't.
Yeah,
I think
I'm becoming a fan of this format. I'm doing it every time, and every time I do it, I go, "This is good."
yeah, it's a great. It's a great it's a great like shtick. I love a good curveball question. I think my first dragon that probably makes this list is
They
definitely.
don't have to be in any particular order. It can just be 3. We don't have to rank them. That's a whole.
Yeah. I think so like Smaug I think has to make this list for me just because I've read The Hobbit so many times. One of my like childhood pastimes when I was like a teenager was to reread The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings series on summer break from school. Just because like I couldn't think of a much better way to spend my afternoons than like wake up late, go down to the pool, swim, sit in my backyard, and read J.R.R. Tolkien.
You could have worse days.
So, yeah, like it was good, you know. Sit on the porch with a bowl of wheat thins and devour some empty calories and a really good book. And then, oh man, that's just bringing back all kinds of formative dragons from my
There's
childhood.
more than you think there are. Once you start to think about it, there's more than a couple.
There were a lot of dragons in Aragon, like the Aragon series, the Inheritance Cycle, by Christopher Paolini, and I'm thinking about a lot of those. I think I have to think carefully about which of those dragons I choose, but it is one, and I think it's there's the dragon rider that Aragon winds up learning from, and he has like a great golden dragon. And that one I think is my pick out of that series. I thought that he was really cool. Third pick. Like going through a lot of childhood IPs here that I really enjoyed. Ooh, okay. Here's maybe a curveball one.
Okay, I love them.
I played a lot of the Metroid series when I was a kid. And Super Metroid is one of my favorite games. And I'm gonna throw like either Ridley or Crocomire on this list. Like weird sort of dragon-like entities that existed in the superheated interior of the planet. Crocomire just wants a hug and also to drive you into a spike wall. And Ridley makes off with a baby Metroid at the beginning of the game. But like, yeah, I think I'm gonna throw. Oh no, wait, hold on. Now that I've said that, I've been playing Hollow Knight recently, and I think I have to go with the Pale King. I'm gonna go with the Pale King.
I was just talking about how I have never played Hollow Knight, so
it's really good. I love to be sad about bugs.
That's what everybody says. Everybody says it's a game about being sad about bugs.
Yeah. So I think my list then is probably Smaug, or Mrs. Dragon, and I think his name is, man, I'm gonna have to go back and reread that cycle. And then the Pale King from Hollow Knight, just because I think that series is cool as hell.
That's cool. I love it. I wrote it down and I was like, well, there's not a lot of dragons. And then I thought about it for 2 minutes and I went, there's a shit ton of dragons. What am I talking about?
A lot of dragons.
There's so many dragons.
Yeah. The longer I talked, I was like, oh no, wait, but that's but now I'm thinking of
now you're thinking
this one or that one.
I like the idea that you said Metroid and then your brain was like, oh yeah, right, video games. Hang on.
Shit.
There's so many video.
Yeah. Oh man, and now I'm cycling through like Riven of 1,000 Voices from the Destiny 2 universe.
Great one. Solid choice. From my broken Destiny heart to yours, solid choice.
Weird, immortal, cause and effect transcending, wish granting dragons that devour the inherent possibility of like the difference between what you desire and what you ask for as like their food. Yeah, that's so cool.
When Destiny is on it, it's fucking on it.
It really is.
They know what they're doing. Yeah, listen, we can take honorable mention Riven. That's fine. Listen, any list is better to have Riven on it. I'm fine with that.
I think I would honestly slot, now that I've remembered dragons from non-fantasy IPs, I think I would probably slot Riven into my top 3. It would be like Smaug for the nostalgia, Riven for the like weird space fantasy cool factor, and then the Pale King because I love me a weird interpretation of a fucked up shape-shifting immortal creature.
Everyone loves a fucked up shapeshifter. But all right, that's gonna be it for us. This was short but sweet. John, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. Thank you so much for chatting. As you know, just a little outro. Why don't you go ahead? Quick. Where can people find you? What do you got going on? Anything like that. Obviously, links will be in the show notes. But I'll give John a chance to talk about whatever he wants to talk about.
Yeah, like I said at the beginning, I'm John Boyle, aka Resident Bard. I'm the co-owner of Breitbart Games. We're an indie TTRPG publisher. We make kind of 2 kinds of games. One of them is like the style of game that Bonds Between is, which is like a cool like ritual storytelling game, usually for like 1 or 2 players. And we also make a lot of like fun, funky zines like Axolotl with a Gun, where it's just you're a horrible little creature doing your best. We kind of like those in equal measure. You can find us at Breitbart Games on a selection of socials, mostly on like Blue Sky and Instagram. You can find me at Resident Bard on pretty much anything. I stream tabletop game design a couple times a week, Mondays and Thursdays at twitch.tv/Resident Bard. And if you want to check out Bonds Between, which is what we've talked about a whole bunch during the podcast, it's on Kickstarter. You can follow the project right now as of the day of this recording. And it goes live on February 4th, runs for all of Zine Month. So we'll be ending just a couple days before the end of February. I think that's what I got. That's what I have mostly. I think that's all of it.
I think that covers everything. Horrible little guy doing your best, I think, is my new Blue Sky bio. I think that's horrible little creature doing your best. Hang on, very important.
Yep. It's the 2 kinds of games we make: esoteric storytelling games that ask you to like find magic in the mundanity of your real life, and wow, that's really cool. And also, you are a horrible little guy. Go fight God.
I mean, the 2 genders. That's all I need. But John, thank you again so much, and go ahead and say goodbye, everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on, Matt. This was a real treat.
That is wonderful. And that's the interview. I want to thank John so much for coming and sitting down with me and talking to me about Bonds Between. I'm so excited to check this game out. I'm really looking forward to playing it with my partner. I think she's going to absolutely leap at the chance to play it any chance we get. The link to the Kickstarter campaign will be in the description. You can go and pre-save it so that as soon as it goes live, you'll get a notification. Links to everything else related to John and Breitbart will be in the description. So if any of their other games that he talked about sounds interesting, you can go check them out. The links to all of the show's pages will be in the description as well. You can come check us out on Blue Sky or Patreon. $5 on Patreon gets you the video version of every episode. Very soon I'm going to be adding the video version of the first episode absolutely free for everyone so they can get a little taste of it. And soon it'll include ad-free episodes because I'm trying to figure out all of that. But again, $5 is the only tier on the Patreon, and I would be very grateful for your support. You can also find links to find me on wherever you want on the internet. I stream EST mornings 5 days a week over on Twitch. I would love to have you come hang out. It's the main thing I do outside of the podcast, and I think you'd have a great time. I already have the next episode recorded, so I'm jumping straight from this to working on that. If you have any feedback, questions, comments, anything like that, you can email the show, feedback at mattcalder.com. If you have anything you'd like to see me add, remove, redo, replace, whatever, please reach out and let me know. But with all that being said, I'm going to go work on dinner. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one.